Hi, I'm Bill Arnold. Thank you for listening to this podcast. There are many more podcasts available at myfaithradio.com. Your support makes this possible. Thank you. I'm all prayed up. Let's turn on the microphone and start the song.
Oh, don't you know, it's the Bill Arnold Show. It's Bill.
And a warm welcome to the Bill Arnold Show. I am the Bill Arnold part of that short sentence. Today we're going to talk about waiting, and I don't think anyone is very good at that, including me. Wyatt, are you good at waiting?
No.
I'm not guessing.
No. I mean, even just waiting in line for food or something, I get anxious, or not anxious, but I get frustrated, and why isn't the line moving? And somebody gets up there to order their food, they can't think about what they want. Well, you've had 5 minutes to think about it. Now I'm sitting here waiting even more. It's a frustrating thing, Bill.
What about when you were in the batter's box playing college baseball?
Ooh.
Tell me, what was waiting like then?
Well, that's a tactic that some pitchers use. They make you sit there and wait, and you just got to try and stay calm. Don't get too antsy, but we're not good at it as humans. We want results now. Waiting is not something we're very gifted at.
So maybe we think that waiting is God's way of stalling, or there's a delay in God's plan, and does he understand the situation I'm in? Because it really would help if he sped things up, and really waiting is part of God's plan. And I am so glad to have Mark Vroegop back on the show. He has written a book called Waiting Isn't a Waste, The Surprising Comfort of Trusting God in the Uncertainties of Life. And he is truly a brilliant communicator and writer. I just find his work absolutely amazing. So I'm so glad to have him back on. Mark, thanks for doing this today.
Bill, it's great to join you. I've been waiting for you to introduce me, so it's been great.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
No,
that was
totally
the plan
fine.
all
I'm
along.
just kidding.
That was the plan all along, though, to eventually bring you on. So I did want to make you wait a little bit. But I love that one of the big central themes of your book is it's not a delay. This is God's plan, and waiting is so painful for us. So maybe we can start by you sharing why it and how it's part of God's plan when it does so much. It frustrates us so much.
Well, yeah, and we'll explore that as we have this, conversation today. But I just think that God builds waiting into our lives, both circumstantially and even from a creation perspective. I mean, we'll go to bed tonight, we'll sleep, and we won't be able to be active. We'll have to wait until we wake up. And it's just a regular reminder in the created order and also in the circumstances of life that, newsflash, we're not in control of our lives. And waiting isn't just a minor theme in the Bible, it's all over the Bible. In fact, what are we doing right now as followers of Jesus? We're waiting for the second return of Christ. So waiting isn't just something that we have to endure. Waiting is something that needs to be embraced. And that's why I wrote Waiting Isn't a Waste, because I'm terrible at waiting. And I just wanted to try and help people grow a little bit as I was trying to do the same.
Mm-hmm. Mark, isn't waiting just at the base of like every prayer request you've almost ever heard? Because you're praying for something, healing, a job, a relationship, a financial concern. I mean, we're just constantly going to God because we're waiting.
Yeah, I mean, certainly most of our prayer life involves talking to Jesus about the gaps that we're experiencing. Although there's a whole host of other things that we're praying about, not because we're waiting, but because we're grieving, we're frustrated, things are happening that we would actually like for them to stop, right? And so we're praying about, when we're waiting, we're praying about the things that we're just uncertain about. And the kind of moment that we find ourselves in is really uncomfortable because our future isn't clear, the circumstances don't line up. And again, it's just a reminder that, I'm not in charge of the universe. But the good thing is I can talk to the Lord who is, and he invites us to pray and to wait upon him, especially in prayer.
Mm-hmm. I heard an illustration in a sermon. I think it was preached by Tim Keller, and he said, imagine the person that you would like to meet more than anybody in the world. All right. And then this person agrees to meet you, and you have instructions to go to their office, and the appointment's at 3:00, and the secretary comes out and says, he got stuck up in another conversation. It's going to be about 40-minute wait. Do you mind? Your answer is no. I'm getting to talk to someone I've always wanted to meet. And so sitting here for 40 more minutes, no problem. So aren't we always kind of in God's waiting room? Why are we so edgy?
Yeah, well, I think, to be just blunt, I think because what we want is what we want, and we often don't want what the Lord wants to teach us, or we don't want Him.
That's an excellent point.
So as a result, we're in that waiting room, and we're not thinking about how marvelous and awesome God is. We're thinking about how annoying it is that I don't know what's going on. And as a result, we begin to obsess about the uncertainty, the gap, the unfairness, the frustration, instead of embracing, no, waiting is a part of what it means to be a follower of Jesus. And frankly, it's a moment for me to prove that what I really believe is real, and it needs to show up right now as I'm waiting.
Mm-hmm. Mark, talk about how this book sort of came out of your own personality. You're kind of an impatient multitasker, aren't you?
Yeah. So I begin the book by saying, some books are written by people who have mastered something. This book is not that. This book instead, was written, through a long season in church ministry, where I just like many pastors found myself in no-win situations. There was really nothing that I could do. The strategies that we were trying to, use to solve problems weren't working. And at some point in time, I had to realize, I have to change my perspective on this. And I really have got to learn what it means to wait on the Lord. And so, there was that circumstance. Plus, I'm wired as a guy who likes to get things done. Mm-hmm. I love a to-do list that's crossed off. I'm looking at one right in front of me right now. I love to accomplish things. I have that kind of personality, and even my last name, Vroegop, is Dutch, and it means literally early up. So there's a story behind how Dutch people got their last names, but my name would be in the Netherlands, Mr. Early Up or Pastor Early Up, and the idea being, we don't wait for the sun to get up. We're going to get going. And so I just feel like everything from my personality, my background, my heritage, it's just I have a bias for action, which can be a really good thing. It served me and the kingdom well, mm-hmm. except for those moments where I was stuck and had nothing that I could do except to wait. And I thought, there's got to be a better way. Instead of resisting this, how can I embrace this? Or, the title of the book, instead of wasting it, how can I really embrace this? And it recounts that journey.
Mm-hmm. Mark, I get the feeling if you've got this to-do list and another job pops up that you go and do, then you return to your list and write that on your list and then cross it off.
Well, how did you know that to be true? That's exactly
did.
I take pleasure. I don't know if I wrote that in the book or not, but it's true. I love doing things so much that if I do something that's not on my list, I'll go back and put it on my list just to cross it off. So a good day off for me is a day when my wife says, "Hey, here's a list of things it would be helpful if you could do around the house." And man, that is rest for my soul. I love that, which is a good thing, but also can become a bad thing.
Yeah. So let's talk about the way, Mark, you've broken up your book, because I think waiting isn't a waste. And we are all waiters to some degree, and we have to figure out a better way to have this time not wasted. So let's talk about, honestly, when you say waiting is hard, I know it'll be comforting for you to share that perspective for people, because there are a lot of people listening to the show that are waiting right now.
Well, yeah. When I've talked to people about this book after writing it, what's been interesting is nobody argues with me that waiting is hard. It's self-evident. There's just something about it that we don't fundamentally like. And, even the psalmist says, I'm weary with my crying out. My eyes grow dim with waiting for my God. That's Psalm 69 and verse 3. So I lead out by acknowledging that, look, we got to get better at this, but we just got to start with the fact that this is really challenging. And then can we talk about why is it challenging?
Mm-hmm.
But these gap moments are opportunities for God to do some pretty important and penetrating things in our lives. But we have to realize that the story of the scripture is filled with people who struggled in their waiting season. And so if we look at waiting through that lens of, man, this is hard, we just need to realize it's true, we're not alone. And yet there's a better solution for how we might try and think about how to spiritually work through those gap moments.
Mm-hmm. Mark, if waiting is hard, and it is, what is some of the collateral damage that comes as a result of it? Like if you're waiting and it's so hard, do you start to think, my trust is starting to diminish?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's so many things that happen. And I think some of this is dependent upon what the situation is or circumstance. And, if you're waiting and you expected life to be different, it's easy to become angry. It's easy to begin to worry. It's easy to become discouraged and disheartened.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And there's just this sense that, is God even listening to me? It can go so far as people really having a bit of a spiritual crisis. Like, Lord, I actually want something good. I'm waiting for something good, and you're not providing it. What does this mean? And that's a real scenario. And yet the Bible also talks about that in a lot of circumstances and situations. So it's there can be collateral damage internally. There also can be collateral damage externally with how we respond to other people, things that we say, and lies that we believe when we find ourselves in this uncomfortable moment of waiting.
Mm-hmm. Can you think of a specific example, Mark, in your own life where you had to wait for a period of time, and can you recall how long that wait was?
Yeah, and this intersects with my first book, Dark Clouds, Deep Mercy. There was a season after the death, stillbirth of our daughter in 2004, when my wife and I were just hoping and praying that the final story of pregnancy for us would not be death, and that God would bless us with another child. And there were multiple miscarriages through that, and all kinds of grief. And then, by God's grace, we conceived our now 20-year-old daughter, Savannah. But during her pregnancy, during my wife's pregnancy with our daughter, wow, those 9 months were brutal, and just waiting on the Lord. There was nothing we could do to speed up the process, but just so many fears, so much uncertainty. And the reality is I'd lost kind of the proverbial husband card of, honey, I'm sure nothing's wrong is going to happen. You're worried about nothing. Well, waiting on the Lord when you've been severely leveled is challenging. And yet, there's texts like Isaiah 40 that are right in the middle of a hard moment in Israel's life, and it says, those who wait on the Lord will renew their strength. They'll mount up with wings like eagles. They'll run and not grow weary. They'll walk and not faint. So that was a long, hard season of waiting, probably the longest one. I don't even recount that in the book, but that, when I look back, that's probably the signature one, perhaps where the Lord started just tuning my heart to not only understand lament, but also to learn what it means to really wait upon Him.
Mm-hmm. Despite you were feeling a little anxiety about that, how did you and your wife process this on a day-to-day basis with each other? I'm sure lots of prayer, no doubt.
Yeah, for sure. And some days, by God's grace, as we were both grieving and waiting, I was in a more faith-filled position than my wife was, and I could kind of bring her along. And then some days she was in a more faith-filled position than what I was. And, I think the definition that I unpack in the book is learning to wait on God, or waiting on God is learning to live on what I know to be true about God when I don't know what's true about my life. And that is one of the most traumatic experiences, but also spiritually rewarding, when my only hope is that God is going to help us, and he's promised that he will help us, and you just live on that every day. So we would shorten our time horizon and be like, we just got to wait on the Lord for today. We got to live by the grace that he's extended to us for this 24-hour increment, go to bed, wake up the next morning, believe that there's going to be fresh mercy for the challenges of the next day. And we just took it day by day by day. And I look back on that season now, and I see how the Lord sustained us. But when you're walking through that valley, sometimes all you can do is just do the next right faith-filled thing.
That's really profound that you would say, I need to just repeat to myself what I know to be true. Because otherwise your imagination and your fears and anxieties can just run wild, can't they?
They absolutely can. Yeah. And that, I think, was one of the biggest lessons, and one that I put into practice regularly, that when I don't know what's going on in my life, there are many things that I do know that are true. I do know what's going on with who God is. And if I can remind myself who he is, it's amazing how my overly intense focus on what I don't know begins to diminish as I reflect on what I do know to be true about God. So waiting on God, I think, is the difference between what I'm focusing on. What do I not know about my life, or what do I do know about who God is?
Mm-hmm. It is easier to call you Pastor Wake Up Early, Pastor Get Up Early, but that is very cute. That's the origin of your name, Vroegop.
Yep.
So I love it. We're going to take a break and come back. Mark Vroegop is my guest. His book that we're talking about today is called Waiting Isn't a Waste: The Surprising Comfort of Trusting God in the Uncertainties of Life. If you have a question or comment, it is welcome. The text line is open, 877-933-2484. Wyatt will have us back in 90 seconds. Hi, podcast listener. I'm Bill Arnold, and my theme song says, "What's for dinner?" And like when I'm grilling, I'm paying really close attention. And I know that ideal second to get the food off the grill. Like all good and ideal timings in life, right now would be an ideal time to be a cheerful giver to Faith Radio. Give now to support this podcast so that more people in more places might come to saving faith in Jesus and grow in their relationship and become a fully devoted follower. Click the link in the show notes or give now at myfaithradio.com. We are talking about waiting today, and Mark, you said in your book that waiting is common. I don't think anyone is going to argue that point.
No, no, nobody wonders what we wait. No, it is a thing that happens all the time, and in fact, we would love it if it was less a part of our lives. And yet, when you look at the Bible, it's not only common in our experience; it's all over the scriptures. I mean, even think of this: the story of the gospel and the crucifixion and the resurrection of Jesus involved waiting. There's Good Friday, there's a gap, and then there's Resurrection Sunday. And I mean, God in his infinite wisdom knew that he's going to raise Jesus from the dead, and yet the disciples still must deal with the uncertainty of the gap moment between the crucifixion and the resurrection. And where are we now? We are waiting for the return of our Lord and King. So waiting is not incidental in God's plan. It's central to it.
Mark, do you think that God is particularly interested in that gap time? I mean, I always think, I hear people say, I lost my job and a new door hasn't opened yet. So you've got one door closed and one door that hasn't opened yet. So you're kind of in that dark hallway. Do you think that God is especially interested in what you're doing when you're in that dark hallway?
Oh, he absolutely is. He's especially interested to meet us and help us. He's also especially interested in the fact that those gap moments become some of the most instructive, painfully so, but instructive moments of our lives. And, if you look back on the Old Testament characters, you're going to find that waiting is a part of many, if not most, of their stories. You got Abraham, you got Joseph, you've got Moses, you got Hannah, you got Job. I mean, of all of these moments that we get the benefit of reading the Bible, and we get to fast forward through 40 years in the wilderness for the Israelites, or 40 years for Moses, or Abraham waiting for the birth of Isaac. we get the condensed version as we're reading through that, but those were daily challenges with learning how to wait on the Lord.
Do we embrace that enough? I mean, just those stories you described and those people, Abraham and Joseph. I mean, he's in prison, and he's there. There are so many amazing stories of people caught in waiting. We don't really talk about the waiting part.
No, we don't, because I think we don't really like it, and we're also not accustomed to waiting. So it'd be one thing if waiting was more part of our lives, and if one of the reasons I wrote the book is not many people had written on the subject of waiting. It's kind of a bit of sort of an old school subject, and in our present environment, we're getting information faster and faster and faster and faster. We become accustomed to not having to live in uncertainty and not having to wait. And even sort of there's an economic principle that's in play here as well, that, boy, not waiting is monetized. It's a status symbol. You get to, bypass the line with a VIP ticket or something of that sort. So the whole way in which our culture works, it just goes cross-grain, this concept of what it means to wait on the Lord.
Yeah, and Mark, aren't we all kind of control freaks? And when we have to wait, we've lost control.
Yeah, I mean, that's at the bottom line. If you kind of boil what's our problem with waiting, I'm sure there may be others, but I think the floor of what's wrong with me when I'm not wanting to wait is I want control. Either I want to know, I want something to change, I want to know why. I mean, how many times have you been in the line and it's like there's a delay and you're trying to look ahead, like, pull your car over. What's going on up there? If I could just know why I'm waiting, maybe it would help. Or, what's happening up here that this is taking so long? Or, why is my internet buffering like it is? And we just can't stand not knowing, not being able to change the circumstances, and sort of being stuck in this moment where we are sort of victims in our own mind of circumstances that we really don't like.
Yeah, I mean, even when I'm checking out of the grocery store, I have to make a decision between 2 or 3 lines. I'll pick one, and then I'll kind of keep an eye on the other line or two to see if I pick the right one.
Right, yeah, you want to win at waiting, right? So I won. I got out of here in 3 minutes earlier. Oh, right. Great, that's awesome,
Right, but I think what I realize is that whenever you're waiting, or I should say when I'm waiting, it really exposes where my trust is, what I'm trusting in. Because when I'm lost, if I've lost control, I have to ask, okay, is God my trust? Am I trusting in Him?
Right. Yeah, one of the things I had to confront was the issue of my internal and unstated expectations. And I think underneath our sort of daily living, we have an idea as to how things are going to go. Maybe how long a meeting is going to take, how many minutes it's going to be from point A to point B, or more consequential, how long until I find somebody who's a soulmate and I can be married, how long until we have a child, how long until I get a new job. I mean, you name it. So I think we have this idea of, well, this is how long it should take. And one of the things that waiting does is it just goes right after our expectations and helps us to see that sometimes we can make an idol out of how we thought our lives were going to turn out or how long something was going to take.
Mm-hmm. I also find, too, when you share Christ with somebody, one of the things that surfaces is God good, and can He be trusted? Because when we're waiting for something and we're starting to wonder, is God still good in this situation? Because I can't figure out what He's doing, and I'm still waiting, and I'm not that happy.
Yeah. And that's where really we have to go back to, so what does the Bible say about who God is and what He's like? Because in that moment, the real comfort is going to come not from the outcome or the timing, but is actually going to come from the assurance that a good and kind God is working out a plan that's for my good. Just because I can't see the plan doesn't mean there isn't a plan.
Amen.
And a good God is orchestrating the events of our lives. And I'm sure, Bill, you can look back on your life. I can certainly look back on mine with a little time or maybe a longer time. I can see, oh, this is what God was doing. And of course, there's some things in which I'm never fully going to understand until I meet the Lord face to face. But, there's plans that are in play. And the Bible tells us that God is working all these things out for good for those who know and love Christ.
Mm-hmm. And then, Mark, when we're waiting for something, do we want what we're waiting for more than God?
Well, yeah, that's a pivotal issue. It's, would I have as much joy and satisfaction of what God is teaching me, or do I just want my answer? Do I want what I want, regardless of the lessons that God is planning on teaching me? And I think that's one of the things that waiting really presses in on is, are you willing to relinquish your right to know why or when or how or even if your desire is going to be given to you in a way that you think is appropriate?
Mm-hmm. Let's talk more about how God develops us, grows us, refines us through uncertainty, because, don't we all have a half a dozen uncertainties in our life right now, or maybe even more? I don't know. There's people listening today that go, I have a dozen uncertainties, and I don't like it. So I don't know if it's comforting, but I want to talk more about how God changes us through uncertainty.
Well, one way he changes us through uncertainty is just helping us to realize that life is far more uncertain than what we even acknowledge.
So true.
Right? I mean, life can change on a dime, right? I mean, that was our story in the death of our daughter. We're going in for, just a process to check, to confirm that there's life, only to find out no. Your in utero baby a few days before delivery has passed away. Like, everything about our life changed in an instant, and that could be just really unnerving, unless you believe in the sovereignty and the goodness of God. And I think the other thing, Bill, that it is important to acknowledge here is just that those moments create just a profound growth opportunity for us that we need to embrace. But again, sometimes we just don't want to grow. We don't want to embrace the lessons. We just really want what we want. And that's part of the problem with why we don't like to wait.
Mark, so your wife had to deliver a stillborn child?
Yeah, she did.
I could just start sobbing right now. Oh my gosh, that
rough.
was so hard.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, 9-pound little baby girl.
Oh.
Yeah, and it looked like she could just wake up any moment. And
I bet you wanted her to.
Yeah, we did. And it was a long, hard journey, and here we are, 22 years later, and I can see the hand of God in that. I mean, he taught me how to lament and set me on a journey to do some writing and pastoral ministry in that space, a ministry I wouldn't have wanted. Didn't choose. If I had to choose between talking about lament or a 22-year-old daughter, I know what I would choose every day, all day long. Right?
Yeah.
I'd choose the daughter. But the Lord in his kindness didn't give me an option. And I've seen his goodness. And I've seen his goodness when he's asked me to wait on things personally, wait on things in the church. It's not been an easy journey, but it's been a good one, a rich one. I'm really thankful.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to take a break, but Mark, when we come back, I want to ask you about what we do while we're waiting, because we're not supposed to be that passive. I think we're supposed to be active. So maybe when we come back, you can chime in on that. Mark Vroegop is my guest, and he's written a book called Waiting Isn't a Waste: The Surprising Comfort of Trusting God in the Uncertainties of Life. We'll be right back. Talking about waiting today with Mark Vroegop. And Mark, when we talk about waiting, what is the biblical perspective on waiting? I don't think we're supposed to just sit and do nothing, right?
No, I mean, we often think of waiting as passive, right? Something that's happening to me, like I'm responding, and yet the Bible acknowledges that that is one way to think about waiting, but it's actually an active sort of response. That the word wait means to look, to hope in. And in fact, when I was in Israel and was working on the book, I showed our tour guide the word for wait in Hebrew, chava, and he said, "Oh yeah, hope." And
Oh,
I said, "No,
wow.
no, wait." I said, "No, it's wait." He said, "Yeah, same thing."
Oh,
I was like, "Wait, what? What?" He's like, "Yeah, hope and wait, they mean the same thing." And he just like blew my mind. I was like, okay. And so essentially to wait means you're looking to something. The idea of like a watchman on a wall, he's waiting and what is he doing as he's waiting? He's watching. So the idea in my waiting, I'm watching for what God is going to do. I'm watching for him. I'm watching for the lessons that he's going to teach me. So in this way, really waiting can be transformed instead of something that you're just resisting and thinking it's just passively happening to me, instead to turn it into something that I'm actively embracing.
don't the Chinese have the word crisis and opportunity mean the same thing?
Yeah, that would be amazing. I'll take your word for it. That would be really cool if that was true, and I hope it is.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. So Isaiah 40:31, a memory verse of mine, those who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up on wings like eagles. And that verse continues. But the whole idea that waiting on the Lord will have your strength renewed, that's something that we should all think about real hard, because that is a very hopeful verse.
It is. Yeah, there's something beautiful, something promise filled, in that statement, that like an eagle that's soaring with sort of the updraft of the wind, there is spiritual strength that the Lord is able to provide. But it's also important to remember that just before that verse, it says this, Jacob, why do you say, my way is hidden from the Lord and my claim is ignored by my God? The idea is they're in a tough spot and they're wondering, God, do you hear? Do you know? And then, Isaiah says, do you not know? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the whole earth. He never becomes faint or weary, and there is no limit to his understanding. He gives strength to the faint, and he strengthens the powerless. So in crisis, when we begin to wonder, God, what are you up to? It's important for us to sort of litigate our questions in the middle of our waiting and say, wait, have you not known? Have you not heard who the Lord is? You know who the Lord is. So instead of thinking about what I don't know to be true about my life, I need to remember what I do know to be true about the Lord.
Mm-hmm. I think we have to be careful not to consider waiting as lost time that we go, well, this is a waste because nothing's happening. I mean, if you live in Minnesota like Wyatt and I do, there's those seasons when you go, I don't know if I can take 20 below weather anymore. It's like I'm just going to put my life on hold until it gets nicer. But we have a tendency of having that mindset where until things get better, things feel like there's nothing to do or nothing to learn. And I think that's a big mistake as well.
It is. It's common, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's when we have to remind ourselves that, no, I shouldn't live that way. And again, I think it's just part of what it means to be a follower of Jesus, that waiting should be expected and anticipated and embraced. James uses the comparison to a farmer who waits. It says for the latter rains, and he uses the farmer as an illustration towards endurance. Mm-hmm. And if you're gonna be a farmer, you're gonna plant, and then you're gonna wait. And if you don't wait, you better not farm, because the seeds won't grow if you dig them up because you want to see how everything's going. And so if you don't like waiting, you shouldn't be a farmer. And in the same way, to be a Christian means that we need to embrace what it means to wait. It's part and parcel of what it means to be a follower of Jesus.
Mark, I like that you used the word endurance relative to farming, but we all need to have endurance. But we live in a world of quick fixes and life hacks and everything else that we want to do. We want to race to YouTube and see a video that'll help us get what we want quicker.
Yeah, and my goodness, in the last couple of years, artificial intelligence technologies have not made that journey any better. In fact, we have so much information right at our fingertips. We just are so accustomed to instant answers, quick solutions, that when anyone says, I don't know, or we don't know what's happening, or circumstances that don't make sense, it just trips an internal sort of cascading series of emotions because we're just so unfamiliar with it, especially in in a generation of children and now young men and women who've never known a world that's been different than this. And there is a need to really learn what it means to wait, even to wait in the middle of a Sunday morning service, just to take some space and just pause and slow down and consider who the Lord is.
Mark, talk about God's timing. If you have someone coming in for counseling, or you're trying to encourage a friend and they're really in the waiting game, what kind of counsel would you be giving them?
Well, when you've got a timing issue, there's just a concern about not just how long something is going to take, but the justification for the timing, right? And so a lot of times when I was counseling someone who's wrestling with why something hasn't happened, we have to unpack, first, we talked about this earlier, what their expectations are. And then secondly, if they're willing to yield that time frame to the Lord in order to embrace something more important, something even more satisfying, which is being able to know and treasure who the Lord is, even in those gap moments. At the same time, I think those gaps, those timing delays, they create a lot of questions that surface. And I think instead of just saying to somebody, well, just trust the Lord and just pray about it, I think we need to wisely and just gently and lovingly help people to unpack why this is so hard. Because often there are layers of stories behind people's waiting. It isn't just that they're impatient. It's that they may be impatient, but they're impatient because they're scared, and they're scared because of something that's happened, or there's a pain point in their life that they just don't want to have it happen ever again. And so waiting creates fear that thing that's happened to them in the past is going to happen again. So it's not as simple as just, stop hating your waiting and embrace it. We need to treat it with a level of pastoral and loving care.
Mm-hmm. And if God is teaching you to trust his character more than the outcome of whatever you're asking for, waiting is time very well spent.
It is. That it is. Yep.
So I love the fact that waiting is going to develop our endurance muscle. And waiting does get us in a place to, when the blessing or the prayer gets answered, boy, we get so excited about the prayer and the time we spent and the hope that we had. And then God finally answers our prayer, and our joy is way more full than it would have been if it got answered in 5 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, there is something about the journey that you see as incredibly valuable when you're through it. I do think that's one of the reasons why those of us who have more water under the bridge in life, we have more stories to be shared in a way that I think could be encouraging of, look, I've seen the benefit of waiting on the Lord. And so, when I was in my early 20s, I was given the book by Andrew Murray, Waiting on the Lord. And it was a treasured book. I love it. I quoted it often in my book. I read that book differently today as a 55-year-old man than what I did as a 25-year-old young man, because I've got more evidence that God is faithful in the gaps. And that's really important, not just to see it in the scriptures, but to embrace how it can be embodied in real time with real people.
Mm-hmm. Mark, is the gaps where we live? I mean, I'm trying to think, do I have some gaps right now? Yeah. Do you have some gaps right now? I'm guessing yes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we all have, gaps of many kinds. Sometimes they're very painful and obvious. Sometimes they're smaller and more incremental, but to be a human, to be a Christian, is to be regularly facing these moments when we're not where we'd want to be, and we're asking the Lord to help us in this journey.
Mm-hmm. And if we pray to God for spiritual formation in our lives, we better be careful what we pray for, because that could involve all kinds of waiting.
Yeah, yeah. And you've heard it said before, probably, Bill, don't, pray for patience, because you're not going to like what comes. Well,
Right.
that's true at one level, but I'm telling you that I don't, I'm not ready to say that I love waiting, but I will tell you, having worked through some things, I see the value of it. And in fact, one of the things in the book I talk about is the value of adding waiting into your planning, or thinking about, before I go into this meeting, I'm just going to wait on the Lord so that I can release my expectations, and sort of just building waiting into our lives intentionally, rather than only responding to what's happening to us circumstantially. I think is a pretty important spiritual discipline to embrace.
Mm-hmm. All right, Mark Vroegop is my guest. We're going to take a little break and come back and continue our discussion on waiting. If you have a comment, one just popped up here. Check out the praise and worship song "Trust His Heart" by Bobby Mason. It totally fits into this conversation. Do you know that song, Mark?
I think I do. The title alone, I
Trust
can't
His
think of the
Heart.
tune in the back of my head, but I think I know. If you can't see His hand, trust His heart. I think that's
I
how
think
the
that's
line
it.
goes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
All right, we'll be right back. We carry each other's burdens. Please know you can bring us your prayer concerns, and we will pray. Share your prayer requests with the Faith Radio team by texting or calling 877-933-2484, or share your prayer requests with the Faith Radio staff and listeners at myfaithradio.com. Mark Vroegop is my guest. We're talking about waiting today. Mark, talk about how waiting is relational. Just that we know God more deeply. I think we lost him. Oh, there he is.
Sorry, I'm here.
Oh,
Sorry,
no
I'm here.
worries.
Had my mic on mute. Yeah, we need other people to help us when our faith starts to falter, or when we start to grow weary. I talk about in the book about a moment where I was in the sunroom of our home, and I just told my wife, I don't know how I'm going to keep doing this. I mean, the press of ministry, the problems, the pain, it was just overwhelming. And my wife, in just a beautiful way, just pushed the word of God into me and said, Mark, God's going to help you. He has to, because he promised. And so I needed to hear that from somebody else. And it was really helpful in a spiritual and emotional moment. And, beyond that, we need people who can physically be present, folks who can even help lighten our loads when we're waiting and things are difficult. And just the value of community is really critical, including the gathering of the church on the Lord's Day, as we are reminded of what we're ultimately waiting for. Those gatherings every 7 days are critical to our success in being able to wait.
Mm-hmm. Mark, talk about how waiting is commanded. I mean, Psalm 27:14 says, "Wait for the Lord." It sounds like a command.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just something you're to endure; it's something you are to obey. And so, wait for the Lord is not just you're in a gap and, well, what's the last? I can't fix this. I can't solve it. So I might as well wait. No, you're commanded. No, wait for the Lord. And the idea is seek the Lord, pursue Him, shift your focus from what you don't know to what you do know about Him. Use your gap moment as an opportunity to drink deeply of your need for dependence upon Him. The idea of wait is I'm going to hope in Him, and that's why it's not just something that we're invited to passively embrace, but we're commanded to actively do.
Mm-hmm. Mark, is there a particular passage in Scripture that you struggle with relative to waiting? I mean, I go to James chapter 1 and I go, boy, there's a tough chapter to deal with. James 1.
Yeah, not a particular chapter per se that comes to mind,
Mm-hmm.
but I will say that the whole arc of God's redemptive plan and how waiting is just built into our experience and God's providential design means that I'm going to face tension a lot because I want to know what I want to know. I want to do. And so it's not just a single, put it this way, Bill, or it's not just a verse. It's the whole Bible. How about that? So not just a chapter, it's the whole story that at times can just be a real struggle. Lord, this is hard to be able to trust in you through all these highs and lows.
Mm-hmm. I think of Abraham, and he waited decades for his promised son. I mean, I would think obviously you'd have to say, well, I don't see how this is going to happen, and the waiting is all in vain. But it's not because God promised.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even Jesus waiting. Well, for the most part, up to 30 years before his public ministry started. It started obviously when he came to earth, but there were a lot of years where there was formation and God was doing amazing work in our lives while we're waiting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if someone were to pick up your book, maybe you could just give us a little something to take home in a brown paper bag. Because I love your work. I love the book, and we just want to encourage people who are in a season of waiting to consider getting this.
Yeah, I wrote it because I want to help people who are wrestling with this issue biblically and compassionately. So if they pick up Waiting Isn't a Waste, they will find a fellow journeyer.
Okay.
They won't hear a sermon, although there's sermonic content throughout the book. And the whole concept was formed in real world, pastoral ministry. And I hope and pray that comes through. And what my prayer is that people, when they face a gap moment, instead of resisting it, they could use it for redemptive purposes and realize instead of overly focusing on what I don't know in this moment, what do I actually know to be true about God? And in the appendix of the book, I have a list of God is verses. And so when I find myself in that moment, really practically, I just start going on a riff through those verses. The Lord is my light and my salvation. The Lord is my refuge, my strong tower. I mean, in the Psalms, he uses all these metaphors. The Lord is my light. The Lord is my refuge. He is my rock. He is my fortress. Why is he doing that? He's doing that, I think, because he's reflecting over and over and over and over about who the Lord is in order to shape and bend his heart back to where he knows it should be. And so the book, I hope, would be hopeful and very practically helpful in how do you transform these gap moments instead of something you just have to endure or waste into moments where you really can embrace what it means to trust the Lord.
And Mark, I'm guessing it's comforting for people to hear that waiting is always going to feel slow from our perspective. Because, a friend can come along and be encouraging, and they can say, well, it's not going to take that long before you're going to have an answer. But for you, the process is always slow.
Yeah, it surely is. In fact, one of my favorite verses on waiting is Psalm 40, where it says, I waited patiently for the Lord. And in my study, I learned that there's actually no word for patient in the Hebrew text in that particular verse. There is a word for patience or patiently, but it wasn't used. And instead, what it is, it's a repetition of the word wait. So you could think of it, it's the Hebrew word kavah. So this isn't exactly how it sounds, but I kavad for the Lord. So I waited. And instead of waiting patiently, here's how Eugene Peterson renders it in the Message. He puts it this way: I waited and waited and waited for the Lord. Mm-hmm. And that's what it means to wait patiently. So for me, what that means is, you know what waiting patiently is? It's actually waiting longer than what I thought I should have.
Wow. I love that.
And so waited and waited and waited for the Lord. That's what it means to wait patiently. And that's just really helpful for me. I just have to wait longer than what I think that I should. And that's what it means to wait patiently and do so with some level of joy and contentment in the Lord.
Mm-hmm. And just to know with certainty that waiting does not mean that God is absent.
No.
He's doing his work. So, Mark, thank you so much for doing the show. I just love having you on. I just think you're an incredible writer and communicator, and just a really nice guy on top of it. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Bill. I appreciate it. It's always a delight to
All
be
right,
on
have
your
a great
show. And thank you, brother.
All right, thanks. Mark Vroegop has been my guest. You know, what I never did was let you know how he spells his last name. That would be helpful. Vroegop. Anyway, that's our show for the day. Thanks for joining. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for listening. Programming like this is made available through your support. Information available at myfaithradio.com.